Hello, test 1, 2. All right, so you can work from here, and all you have to do is hit the space bar, or if you want to, you can use a clicker if you want to walk around. It's your preference.
All right, I'll probably just talk from the mic. It's easier.
Fine.
And
then you can just adjust it to the way you want.
Yep.
That's why I wanted you to be able to look at it here instead of worry about there.
Beautiful. And this is.
I haven't turned. It's just I've already got it plugged in.
Yeah.
It's a remote clicker, so if you want to move around. But if you want to use it, you got to turn it on. In which case, you just hold the on/off button in for about 5 seconds, and then this turns red. I'll show you. Come on.
Got it.
And I'll turn it off so we don't use up the battery. If it'll turn on, or I could just leave it on for now. I don't know.
The arrow clicker is just this one right here, right?
Or, well, if you want to go forward, the space bar will do it.
Easiest thing, I got
Yeah.
it. All right, you're just going backwards over there. I got you. All right.
And that should do it.
Sounds good.
All right. I guess I'll leave this on anyway. If I run out of battery, I got another one anyhow.
Do you tend to be stationary, or I think I will, just so I can use the slides rather than just running around. Talking into a mic. Got it.
Two minutes. 2 minutes to fun time.
Wow.
Okay, good morning, wise men. Morning, all right, good. All right, everybody get a seat. I think we rolled out some extra chairs because we're such a good number of turnout today, so it's great. Glad to see everybody here. Perfect. Well, the first thing actually, we'll go to the first thing. First thing, turn off your cell phones. Okay, guys, you got that. Going to have the pledge today, and Nabil is going to lead the pledge. He's been practicing all morning.
Got it in English.
He's also the winner of the crazy shirt contest.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Nabil. Even if the U.S. women's soccer team doesn't like to do that type of stuff, we do. All right, I didn't actually see Jay Dernberger out there today, but maybe he was there, crossing guard. I saw 3 cones, so that was good. Thanks to the coffee team, Mari and Bill Flanagan, Joel Wasserman, Al for getting the donuts like usual. And did we have bagels this morning, Dick? Yeah. Okay, and we added a little special bagel. We're trying it out. And the AV team who helps produce this stuff, put it together. You don't realize this takes a whole week for us to get this together, you know? It doesn't happen in one day. All right, so Bruce Warner, Doug Weaver, Dick Call, Jim Wong, and Eileen Rhymes. So thank you guys for that. All right, well, here we go. We're going to have our joke of the morning. And it's going to be by Steve Raffle. We shall see. And if anybody wants to tell a joke in the future, I'm taking nominations. Come on up and let me know, and we'll see how you do. All right, Steve. Yeah. That's a joke right there. Yeah.
Okay, we're ready for the second joke. It seems that a young Irishman and a Mormon were seated together in the first class of an airplane. Plane takes off, gets to cruising speed, and the flight attendant walks down the aisle providing a free glass of champagne to those in the first class section. When she gets to the Irishman, she said, "Sir, would you like a glass of champagne?" He said, "Sure, I'd love one. Thank you very much." Then she turns to the guy next to him, the Muslim, and asks him, the Mormon, and asks him if he'd like a free glass of champagne. And he said, "I would rather be ravished by teenage virgins than have a drop of liquor touch my lips." At this point, the Irishman hands the champagne back to the flight attendant and says, "Here, take this. I didn't realize there was a choice."
Very good, very good. Somehow I skipped past the important part here. We're going to have time to pay our dues coming up. It's renew your membership, so you'll get a letter this week on your email. It'll tell you how to do it by credit card. That's just the easiest and fastest way. Or you can bring it in and put a check in the mailbox there, or in the box, and or you can send it into our mailbox in the post office. All right, guys, let's get them done. Well, they're 115. That's 115. Okay, not 150. 115, and you make it out to the Wise Men of Westport and Weston. If that's too much, just make it out to Wiseman. We'll cash it. Don't worry. All right. So, sometimes like new presidents start, they kind of have, here's my ideas, here's my principles, here's my strategies, here's my thoughts, this is what I want to accomplish. I realize in consulting you can only keep maybe 3 thoughts in your head at the same time and remember them, all right? Maybe it's less than 3 these days, I don't know. But here's my thoughts. Live, learn, and love. Okay, live, get out there and do stuff, guys. Just join us on our different activities, the fun things that we do. There's so many of them. You come to the meetings, that's great. So that's the live part. Learn something new, okay? Try. I'm trying to learn bridge, which is a struggle, but, learn to play basketball. I learned how to do that. There's all sorts of things you can do. So learn how to play golf. Come join us in tennis. We got 3 book clubs now. 3 different ones, so you must find something you like. We don't have a dirty sex talk book club yet, okay? Okay, and love. Basically, love each other. Love being here, love being together, love being with your fellow men. Some of you, I'm sure, have read recently about the blue zones. Now, the blue zones, supposedly, there's 6 or 7 places in the world where people live extraordinarily long lives, healthy lives. And they vary a lot by the characteristics. Some different diet, some different geography, different weather, different gene pools. But the one thing they all have in common is they all have a really tight, good sense of community. So that's what I think that we need to have, okay? We have it already. We need to enforce it. So do stuff with your Wisemen. Join committees, join the different groups we have. We have so many groups. I'm sure you guys know that. So get involved. And then I think we'll be doing great. So I call this a mantra. You guys know what a mantra is, right? You remember Baba Ramdas? Okay, so we're going to try this 3 times. Live. Learn. Love. Live. Learn. Love. Live. Learn. Love. All right. Now, my wife already thinks the Wiseman is a cult, So, because all I do all day, she said, what are you doing? I'm Wiseman. What are you doing, Wiseman? So anyway, all right. Membership update. Ron Holtz is not here. He's doing a great job, our new membership guy. And we're just like going bananas on getting new members. It's great. And so send your bios to Ron if you haven't done that yet. Get your photo done. Get it on the website. And we'll be talking more about members next month. All right. Bill is here. Tell us about it. This is part of the living and learning stuff, guys, about the different trips and events we have coming up.
Good morning, Wiseman. Like Dewey said, it takes a lot of effort to put these things together, and I bring up my notes here, and here they are already for me. So thank you, you guys who do this. Now I can speak to those as well as whatever else I have on the piece of paper. Before I talk about what's happening now, this is my first meeting. I was away the last 2 weeks. But as you know, we had a group that went up to see the races on historic weekend at Lime Rock over Labor Day weekend, which was quite nice. Yesterday, or rather, Tuesday, we had one of Warren John's New York City walks. He does them every month. They're getting increasingly popular. To my chagrin, I was not able to do it because I had to lead the T&E committee meeting that day. But the point being is Warren is a wealth of knowledge about New York, but he's not the only one. We're going to do more and more New York stuff. We had a visit last Sunday to the Mongers Market, which is an industrial flea market as well as a flea market in general in an old industrial building within a stone's throw of I-95, which is led by Joel Pinsky, which is also very interesting. We'll do that again. It was just really kind of neat. We all met for breakfast in the morning and went down there and poked around, and it was a good time. So what's coming up right now? You should have in your in baskets on your computers notices for the following. A beekeeping lecture at Wakeman Farm on Friday the 29th, which is a week from tomorrow. You must RSVP to that. Just go click where it says to click on the email and go there. We have, the next day, we have a walking tour of the Great Gatsby story in Westport, which is being led by Deej Webb, who is a member here. I don't see him today, but he is a member here. He was also chairman of the history department of New Canaan school system, and he's a great storyteller, and he's really into Great Gatsby. So that's happening. You need to reserve with the Historical Society on that. Again, if you go to the email that was sent to you, there's a link there, or if you go to the website under the trips and events page, there's a link there. There are two different links. They'll take you to the same place. It should be very good, and people are signing up for that quite actively. That same day in the afternoon, it just so happens that the social committee, who works together with us, is doing a visit and tour of Wynne Allen's house. And Wynne Allen's house, as you may know, is historically significant in terms of the design, and Wynne has opened it to us. Then, coming up very, very quickly on Monday, October 2nd, is a visit to a fish farm in Waterbury. And at this point, I'm going to bite my tongue and resist telling you more about it because I'm excited about it, but even more excited about it is the guy who is organizing it, and that's Al Landis, and he's going to tell you about it.
Good morning, wise men. Well, we're going to visit the Ideal Fish Farm, which is a it's a self-contained fish farm that lets nothing in. It's ecologically perfect, almost. What they do, it's in Waterbury. We'll be leaving from exit 42 in a carpool at 9:30, not at 9 o'clock, 9:30. We can squeeze in 12 people. I've got 10 people right now, so it's an opening for 2 more people. And what they do is it's a sustainable, cage-free fish farm. They capture the fish waste, and they produce fertilizer for local farmers. They use all the byproducts in dog food. The water is recirculated, so it's mechanically, etc., very, very interesting. It's probably the only one of its kind in the country, and we'll be going up there, as I say, on Monday. So I have room for 2. You can either call me or email me if you're interested.
Thank you, Al. What type of fish do they grow there?
Tilapia, trout, shrimp, and
Tilapia, trout, shrimp,
I forget one other one.
and all the ones you find at Stop and Shop, right?
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Al. And John Fox has a notice for you guys about something very interesting coming up. A lot of you probably want to join it. This is part of the, all these things that Bill talked about, Al talked about. This is part of the live part, getting together, and it's the learn part. So we get 2 things in one. Go ahead, John.
Good morning, wise men. A little housekeeping. The box for the Glass Connect collection will be back there for another 3 weeks. So please don't bring them in the 4th week. The glass box is there, and a lot of people could use your old glasses. Number 2, this particular month is absolutely lovely at the beach. The beach picnic we had Tuesday night was lovely. It was warm, a little breeze, and sunny, and we'll probably run them for at least 2, possibly 3 more weeks. Last item on my agenda, the military discussion group that I mentioned last week. The first meeting will be this Monday in the church, the 3rd floor, at about 10:15. And the topic is the German invasion of Russia. Now, the problem I'm having right now is, can I have a little show of hands of how many might be interested and might be coming? A little show of hands? All right. For this number, we fit in that room upstairs. If we get much bigger, the senior center is trying to get us a space. So Monday about 10:15, upstairs, third floor, Russia. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And that's part of the live and the learn, the love. All three of those things are in there. All right, tonight we have, just to let you guys know, Jeremy Schaap, who actually was with us at the library, I don't know, 3 weeks ago or so, 4 weeks maybe. He did the interview of Gino Oriyama, if you guys were at. How many went to the Gino talk? Wasn't that one of the best talks we ever had? Yeah. It really was. I thought he was a nonstop comedian, even though that's not what he does for real life. But anyway, it was great. But Jeremy did the interviewing with him, and it was so smooth. He's a professional from ESPN, if you don't know him. He's been doing this type of stuff for years. So he's going to be interviewed by another Westporter, Jim. Who is it? Yes, thank you. And so that should be great. So come on down to the library if you got nothing better to do tonight and learn something new. All right, Wise Men Social. Well, we had a good beach party, right? Everybody had a good time? Yes, yesterday thank you. Yesterday I was in Stop and Shop, and this woman came up to me and says, Dewey Losell. I said, yeah, okay, I didn't steal anything. And she says, I'm Mimi Greenlee. Are the Greenlees here? No. She said, I'm Mimi Greenlee. And I had such a good time at that beach party. I danced all night. The next morning, I was so sore when I got up. So I think that's a sign of a really good party. All right. So Bill mentioned it. Win Allen, is Win here? Yeah, there he is. Okay, right. So he's opening up his house to us for this special tour and like a social, schmoozing, and it's going to be great. He's got a fabulous house. It's on the historical register here, and he also has some amazing artwork in there and some amazing stories about famous people. And so he's going to entertain us, and it's going to be wonderful. We already have. I'm going to talk about that. Oh, well, wait a second. Bruce is going to talk about it.
Okay, an elderly couple were dining at another elderly couple's house, and after dinner, the wives left the table and went into the kitchen. The two men were talking, and one said, last night we went out to a really good restaurant. I would highly recommend it. The other man said, oh yeah, what's the name of the restaurant? First man thought, and thought, and thought, and finally said, what's the name of the flower you give someone you love? You know, the red one with thorns. Ah, you mean a rose? Yes, that's the one, he yelled to his wife. Hey, Rose, what's the name of that restaurant we went to last night? So wise men Dr. Winston E. Allen, trailblazer, pried open Wall Street in the early 60s when it was slammed shut because of its color. He persisted and founded the first black-owned broker-dealer firm, Creative Investor Services, Inc. His book, I Pried Open Wall Street in 1962, documents his journey overcoming the many barriers he faced. But this is not about the trailblazer. This is about the house that Win and his late wife Ruby bought in 1975. It was built in 1957, designed by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, protege Roy Binkley, both of the German Bauhaus School of Architecture. Binkley's Wikipedia entry mentions the Allen House in Westport as one of his masterpieces. If you have a subscription to Architectural Digest, you can read more about Roy Binkley in their archives. The Allens' Japanese garden was designed and planted by Frank Okamura, curator of the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. In 2010, the house was placed on the National Register of Historical Places by the United States Department of the Interior. Unfortunately, the tour was oversubscribed, and we didn't expect 81 people. As a result, the tour will be given on both Saturday and Sunday at 2 p.m. In the order of your registration, you will be assigned Saturday or Sunday. If someone can't make it on Sunday, we will try our best to find someone assigned to Saturday who is willing to change to Sunday. You will be receiving an email soon with the assignments and other pertinent information. Parking will be at the Westport train station parking lot on the New Haven bound side and closest to Route 136, aka Saugatuck Avenue. If you're using GPS, you can put in 27 Ferry Lane East, Westport, and you'll be immediately across the street on Ferry Lane from the pickup point. All this will be sent in an email in the next few days, if not tomorrow. I'm not introducing anyone, so I guess you go.
Are you soliciting new RSVPs for that or no? If you have an RSVP,
Sadly, we had to close registration because we were expecting 40 and we got 81, so registration is closed. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much, Bruce. As you can tell, we don't really practice these things too much, the handoffs. But anyway, yeah, it's great that we have this special event that Wynn's letting us share with him, and it's part of the Live, Learn, and Love part, guys. All right, Doug.
Thank you, Dewey, and good morning, wise men. Good morning. I'm here to preview our next two speakers and to introduce today's speaker. Next week, the wise men are hosting Old Greenwich resident Joe Gianquito. I don't know if anybody met him last week. He was here to check out the scene. He was quite impressed. Joe graduated from Seton Hall in 1960. He served 2 tours of duty in the U.S. Army and became a madman at William Esty. After Esty, Joe began his 38-year career as a television production manager at Westinghouse Broadcasting, ABC, NBC, and ESPN. Joe is going to fill us in on the life of Mel Blanc, arguably the greatest voice actor of the 20th century, next Thursday here at the church. So, hope you can make it. At the library on Monday, October 2nd at 7 p.m., William Tong, Connecticut's Attorney General, will present to the wise men and Westport at large. A.G. Tong will talk about how his office fights and wins against wrongdoers in the state of Connecticut. The lawsuits against Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family have garnered a lot of attention in the press, but the suit against Joseph Bierbaum may have a more direct and more immediate impact on Connecticuters. Tong will discuss the collapse of Mr. Bierbaum's for-profit colleges Stone Academy and Pyre School of Art. The Attorney General alleges that Bierbaum, quote, told lies to, end quote, his students. The schools have collapsed, leaving 800 students in a lurch. The AG contends that Bierbaum's assets should pay for their restitution. Tong will also talk about the cooperative multi-state effort to hold the Sacklers and Purdue Pharma accountable for their actions and how payments from that suit will benefit Connecticuters. Remember, the Tong event is at the library at 7 p.m. on October 2nd. There will be no church meeting 2 weeks from this week on Thursday, October 5. Today's guest is Andrew Banoff, the CEO of Mosaic Senior Life. Andrew joined Mosaic 20 years ago when it was named Jewish Senior Services. He'll talk about the issues associated with aging and memory loss. Andrew will take a wide-angle macro view about what is happening to the aging population in America and in Fairfield County today. He'll focus in on the living options we'll face as we age and the factors we will have to consider if we suffer from advanced memory loss. Let's give Andrew a hearty welcome back.
Thank you, Doug, and good morning, wise men. Pleasure to be here, and little did I know that Dewey was going to make a perfect segue introduction for me with his new mantra, Live, Learn, Laugh. And I wasn't going to start with, but I will in that spirit. The takeaway for today, which is called Top 10 Longevity Tips, is in the back of the room for you to take on the way. But I have to share with you just a few which are going to set the stage for today's entire discussion. Number 3, keep your mind sharp through mental exercise. The mind is a muscle. It must be used. Clearly, in your spirit of your mantra. Avoid isolation. Find someone to love and something to keep you engaged, which the wise man clearly is. Laugh every day. Happiness breeds contentment, and laughter remains one of the best medicines. And finally, probably a favorite for this group, keep spice in your life, either in your food, your reading, or your love life. So those are your takeaways. I'm going to cover a whole lot of material to get back to that point, but it just seemed relevant to start there. And since we know laughter is the best medicine, I'm going to add a quick joke. And the number of jokes I have related to dementia, I am going to save for another day, but I do want to share with you the fact that, sorry, it just wouldn't set the stage properly, but the wisdom of older individuals is very important. So one day there was an older gentleman who was in the line at the drive-thru at the McDonald's. When he was up ready to place his order, the young woman in the car behind him started beeping her horn and waving her arms like, come on, come on, come on already. And he was slightly offended, but he placed his order. And then when he went up to the next window to the cashier to pay, he said, I'd like to pay for my order and for the order of the young woman behind me, an act of kindness. When the woman drove up to the next window and saw the cashier, and the cashier obviously explained that her order was paid for, she felt terrible. She reached out her window and she said thank you, and she waved her apologies. And finally, at the third window, when the man picked up the food, he provided both receipts and took his food and hers. Wasn't the first time it happened to him, but maybe she learned a lesson. All right, let's get into some of the fun stuff. And I'm going to move all of everybody's fancy notes here. Keep going, beautiful. All right, there's William Tong, there's me, and issues associated. So 3 very quick announcements, which I think are relevant to the audience and hopefully for today's conversation. The name Mosaic Senior Life and Mosaic Nursing Home, Mosaic Home Care, Mosaic Hospice, Mosaic, we're going to drill that in for a while because this year is our 50th anniversary of being founded as the Jewish Home for the Elderly. Most of us, including me, having been around a long time, will still refer to the nursing home as the Jewish Home, and that's okay. That's why we used the Mosaic Jewish Home as part of the name. But the critical message was 2 things. 1, we are an incredibly beautiful story of diverse culture, welcoming and inclusive to serve people of all faiths. And we needed to find a name that was representative because for 20 years, people have said to me, you have a wonderful organization, but will you take care of me or my mom because she's not Jewish? The answer, of course, is yes, but we wanted a name to reflect inclusiveness, and simultaneously we needed to be able to say to people all of the things that we do, including home care and hospice and adult day care and everything that's out in the community, it's all the same organization. So we hope the new name allows us to accomplish those 2 goals. I apologize, but also forgive you in advance for everybody who calls it the Jewish Home. It's totally okay. Number 2, Jack Mitchell is here, a number of board members that have been involved in the Wise Men, including 2 of the people that recruited me to this organization 20 years ago that were Wise Men, helped me build and learn a story that is ultimately about relationships. And this year, in honor of my 20th anniversary, I published a book that is called 5200 Sundays, which is 100 years. And the book is free. This is not a pitch by any means, but it's a story of relationships that if you have some time and you want to read about relationships between residents and their children, residents and each other, residents and family members, residents and staff, the book is all about relationships, and the website is 5200sundays.org. It is free, so please enjoy it if you choose to, and if not, it was my way of saying thank you to the community, because you have truly built something that is very, very special. And last but not least, in terms of announcements, one of your members is being honored at our gala next month, Jim Bennett, who unfortunately could not be here today, who has done tremendous work in our organization, is being honored with our highest award, the Lunan Award, at our gala October 26th. If anybody is around, sees Jim and wants to say congratulations, a well-deserved honor for the work that he has done. So let's get into this. I am going to, in the next 30 minutes or so, cover this agenda and drill down into some hopefully good details for you to take away the story of senior living, from the population to the illness to the choices and some of the repercussions of the issues that we are facing. I'm going to try and leave as much time as I can for questions because I find that to be the most meaningful part of the conversation. But that is the story, clearly with a focus on memory loss and the impact that it has not only on the individual but their families, as you know. Some quick data that is not shocking in any sense of the word. Life expectancy has grown tremendously. The United States is now just about 80 years of age. We are sadly 47th in the world. If you want to live longer, there's a few places that you can move to. But for those of us that are here, just a recognition that has come a long way. Since I'm speaking to the wise men, I can say life expectancy for men is 5 years less than women. My bad joke on that subject is, why do men die sooner than women? Because we can. Doesn't work in all audiences, but this one it could. Population, again, no shock value. The aging population of 85 years and older, which is the primary population that we serve, is going to double in the next 30 years. Think about that for 1 second. Population 85 and older is going to double in the next 30 years. We as a world, not just the United States, are completely unprepared to handle it. I'm going to talk about some of the scenarios that are evolving, but the reality is home care, skilled nursing, assisted living, all the things that we look to for solutions for all of us are not equipped to handle even the growth we're experiencing today. And the baby boom demographic, which is obviously the driver in this conversation, starts turning 75 in the year 2031. The growth hasn't really started. So we are at the precipice of what will be an enormous change in society as it ages, and the need to be doing this work is critically important because of this data. And for those of us that plan to be still working in 2031, including me, it's a really important driver. All of our efforts are based on the fact that we need to gear up not only with more, but with better alternatives to what people are looking for. Because when I ask any audience, and I promise I won't do it today, how many people want to spend their last years in the nursing home, the answer is nobody except me, which I do because I think it's beautiful. But we need to do better. We need to do more, and this is why. Population. So for everything else in this morning's discussion, let's talk about the 75 plus population, because that's the data that drives the community and the demand for every level of care. I know no one in this room is yet 75, but let's imagine the future when you might be, or if you know anyone that might be 75 and older. Fairfield County, it's about 5% of the 960,000 people, so call it round number 50,000 individuals today. Remember what I said a minute ago, that's going to double starting in 2031 over the next 30 years to by the time 2050 is here. It's an enormous part of the story in terms of everything that follows. The good news is only about a quarter are going to need some form of what we'll call facility or institutional care. 3/4 will be cared for in their private residence, whether it be a home or apartment or condo that they move to, but the vast majority are going to be cared for in the community, and about a quarter, and only 10%, 1 in 10, will need the level of skilled nursing care, which is the highest level of care provided that's available. So when we talk about the levels, let's think about community as the bulk, institutional a little bit less, and as I mentioned, the baby boom demographic is going to be the impact. One more piece of good news. We talked about average age being 80 in the United States, a little bit less. As you age, your longevity increases. So if you've reached 65, oh boy, without glasses now, even I can't see it, you're going to live another 16 years, I think it says. And if you reach 75, you get 12 more years. So your longevity increases with age. So the longer you live, the longer you continue to expect to live. And the relevant comment, obviously, is what's your plan? I'm going to show you data in a minute about long-term care insurance, but the national statistics and even the Connecticut statistics, a very small portion of the population has long-term care insurance or has any kind of a plan for what they're going to do. You will say you have Medicare or some other form of medical insurance, but that doesn't pay for long-term care. So let's talk about the options in a little bit more detail. Again, the vast majority will be served in the community. Anybody, and it's unfortunately most everyone, has had to deal with healthcare need over time. It's a very fragmented system. You are your own care manager. You go to your doctor, you go to your specialist, you may need to go to the hospital. At some point, you might have needed home care. It's a really challenging situation. For those that are well organized and structured, you manage it yourself. Maybe you hire a care manager. If you've dealt with this in the past for your parents, maybe your kids help out. But the structure of the system is very disjointed. When you move into any senior living community, assisted living, memory care, or skilled nursing, it gets easier, but remember, it's the minority of the population that will be there. So what are your choices at home? I want to live at home. I plan to live at home. I expect to live at home. Who's going to help me? Not a lot of people give the answer, my kids are going to come in and take care of me, but that's a choice. You can hire caregivers privately, which is what most people do, and there's lots of choices. 7 years ago, if I'm not messing up the date, there were 300 private home care agencies in the state of Connecticut. Yesterday, because we looked for a different reason, there are almost 1,000 agencies that are registered in the state of Connecticut because everybody's looking to prepare for the future. We offer that service. Many other wonderful agencies do. It is a choice for you to take advantage of. Both nonprofit and for-profit agencies are out there. Talked about family. There is a structure that I won't get into today, but just be aware it's a wonderful structure called adult family living homes that we helped create in the state of Connecticut about 6 or 7 years ago now, where the family member can actually get paid to care for you, anyone but a spouse. And if anybody's interested, I'm happy to talk about that more offline. Medicare pays only for episodic care after a skilled need, either in the hospital, either by being in the hospital or by having some sort of medical illness. They don't pay for long-term care. They don't pay for any type of ongoing longitudinal service. It's only episodic, whether it be short-term rehab after the hospital or Medicare certified home health agency. There's lots of those choices. It's a wonderful resource, but it's temporary. Same thing true for hospice, which is end-of-life care. So there's lots of good community resources, but it takes coordination of you as the caregiver. This is probably more of an eye chart than I would like it to be. I just want to recognize that the vast, vast majority of communities that are out there, assisted living, memory care, nursing homes, places that you potentially would go or your friends would want to go, are owned and managed by the for-profit industry. Unlike the hospital industry, especially in Connecticut, healthcare is a for-profit business, and with no disrespect to people that have invested to make money in the industry, it's just something to be aware of. The one exception to that comment are called CCRCs on this slide. They're now called life plan communities. And as you'll see more later, there's only a few in Connecticut, but that's a choice that allows all of those levels of care to be integrated. And for some interesting reason, almost all of those are owned by not-for-profit organizations. It's the one anomaly in the structure. The point of this slide is that there's lots of choices if that's what is of interest to you. Digging a little bit deeper, skilled nursing care, I'm sure you all know, is the highest level of care for those that need it most. in all likelihood, it is people in the latest chapter of their lives when they've got either extreme medical need or dementia where they need to be safely protected in an environment. The average age in nursing homes in Connecticut is about 87, 88. In our Mosaic Jewish home, it is actually 92, which I always am astounded with. The average life expectancy in a nursing home in the United States is a little under a year. Average life expectancy in ours is almost 4 years. So it can be a good situation, but it's certainly never easy and not a choice that people plan to make. And generally, the facilities are older. We built our new nursing home on Park Avenue, 7 years ago, and before that, there wasn't a nursing home built for 20 years, so it's an older industry. Assisted living, next level down, almost entirely paid for privately. There's no government funding, Medicare, Medicaid, or any other source to oversimplify the conversation. There's lots of examples of these throughout Connecticut, in Westport, throughout Fairfield County. Sunrise, Benchmark, Maplewood, LCB, you all know the places that are around. They do provide 3 meals a day, they do provide care, and the general conversation is you pay a monthly rent, and then you pay an extra fee for the level of care that you need. But they're wonderful choices, they're beautiful facilities, and generally well-intended organizations that are trying to provide a resource as an alternative to skilled nursing. Round numbers, there's about half the number of assisted living beds as skilled nursing today. I think that continues to switch over time. The question I often get asked is, what's the difference? And without getting into the clinical model, my slightly simplistic answer is you get a one-room studio versus you get a one-bedroom apartment. You pay for the assisted living privately, and in most cases, you pay through Medicaid for the skilled nursing, for the long-term care bed. But that's the model. So you've got 2 skilled nursing beds on the left, 1 assisted living, 1-bedroom apartment on the right. You get 350 square feet or 375 square feet versus 750, and then you share other spaces for your meals and activities with other individuals. For those that have not been up to the new campus in Bridgeport, very quickly, just a couple of visuals. That's the campus. It's 9 acres with a 400,000 square foot building, all private rooms, all private bathrooms, all private showers. As I said, the newest facility in the state. That is a skilled nursing household. It's not your typical looking nursing home, which is exactly the point. Meals are made inside the house by a homemaker. We made it as home-like as possible. We do have a child care program, adult day program. And the thing that I always leave this section with is the image. Very often the phone call comes when you need it, but what we really want people to do is do the planning, think about what they want before they need it, so you've got as many choices as possible. What are your other choices? There are independent living options out there, and let me talk about this CCRC or life plan community. And those of you that know the market or have ever visited friends, Edge Hill in Stamford and Meadow Ridge up in Reading are the only 2 that are close to Westport. The Watermark up in Bridgeport, Whitney Center in Hamden, and the Rye in Osborne, New York are the only ones at all in this geography. And as I said, they offer all levels of care. You have to move in when you need independent living, so it requires some planning and some forethought to say, I'm moving into a residence, but I know that if I need skilled nursing or assisted living or memory care, it's there on site for me if I need it. And I've planned not only my care need, but my financial future, because you're fixing your cost for the rest of your life. It's a brilliant model. It was invented in Pennsylvania about 50 years ago. The Watermark in Bridgeport is one of the oldest ones in the United States, something like 45 years ago. Meadow Ridge and Edge Hill in Stamford are about 25 years old now. So there's some good history of this product in our market. And without spending any time today on what we are doing in terms of Stamford, I do want to acknowledge that we have purchased 15 acres of land on Long Ridge Road in Stamford to build what will be the newest life plan community in Connecticut. There will be 168 apartments, We are currently in the pre-marketing phase. We have completed the architectural design, and sometime by the end of the year, we will open the sales center on Long Ridge Road. And again, happy to talk more offline. That's not what today was about, but there is going to be another option for people to consider in our marketplace. Financially, since this question always comes up, and I don't want to get too technical, there's 3 types of contracts. But when you hear the term life plan, you're generally referring to what's called a Type C agreement, which means I am guaranteeing my price and cost for any level of care for the rest of my life. Because it's confusing, I will just say there are some communities like the Osborne that only offer a Type A, which means you pay fee for service for your levels of care. There are some iterations called Type B, which is a modified life plan. And none of them are right or wrong. It's just important to understand what the model is when you get into it. In all likelihood, we're going to offer all 3 because I think people are smart and sophisticated and like doing their own financial planning and want to know what the implications are for those cost differentials. As I said, when you move in, you pay a life plan fee. It is not a real estate transaction, but you're buying the protection of living there. Ultimately, your estate typically gets back 90% of what you paid in with your entrance fee, and then you pay a monthly fee that covers your meals and utilities and cable TV and maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a fixed fee for the everything else part of your life, and you're guaranteed what those costs are going to look like. Okay, those are the choices. Who are we dealing with? What are we working on? And let's get into some of the clinical stuff. Again, no shock value. Alzheimer's disease is the largest reason we have this conversation with anyone, whether it be home care or institutional choices. And Alzheimer's disease, again, consistent with the rise in the population, is growing, absent there being some pharmaceutical solution, of which today there are none. I'm going to show you all the things that are out there that are meant to slow the progression of the disease, but there are no cures as of today. And all of the data is predicated on the fact that there won't be in the next 30 years. I'm an eternal optimist, and I believe there will be, but sitting here today, there are not. The term dementia is often confused and confusing, and I will attempt to simplify it in a way that always works for me. Dementia is the broad description of any illness that is associated with decline in memory clinically that is not normal aging. The best description I can give you, normal aging is, I'm looking at Jimmy and I can't think of his name. I know him, I can't see his badge, but I forgot that his name was Jimmy. Normal aging is walking out to the parking lot and saying, I don't remember where I parked my car. Those are normal things. What is unfortunately true cognitive impairment, which is memory decline, is when you walk out to the parking lot and you don't know who drove you to the meeting. It's funny, thank you, but it's also real. And for family members, including all of us, including me, I turned 60 this summer and my memory of names really started to change. It's important to understand the difference between the two because memory decline outside of normal aging is what we're talking about. Alzheimer's disease is often confused with dementia. Alzheimer's disease is one form of dementia. It happens to be the most common type. It's 60 to 80% of all cases. It's okay to use them interchangeably because of that fact, but just in terms of clarity, Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia. There are others, vascular dementia, Lewy body, Parkinson's, frontotemporal, et cetera. So you'll hear lots of other terms that are all forms of dementia. Alzheimer's is typically not really diagnosed until after death, but there are some tests that are getting better at helping doctors diagnose. And the thing you will hear that's the common description are plaques and tangles. Those are things that normally don't happen inside the brain, but in fact, in Alzheimer's disease, they do, and your brain system essentially gets clogged. Back to the longevity tips for one more second. Brain health is exactly the same issue as cardiac health, and anything that you're doing that your doctor tells you is good for your heart is good for your brain. So in terms of how do you protect it, how do you help it, it's the exact same set of issues. The other term that people will use and hear, oh, they have mild cognitive impairment. Is that dementia? No, it's not. In about 50% of all cases of mild cognitive impairment, it progresses to dementia. It is not, obviously, therefore, a guarantee, but it is a pretty good indicator that you have issues to worry about. There are lots of ways to get tested, and there are lots of physicians, both internal medicine, neurologic, the geriatric assessment centers. There's lots of ways to do the assessment, but it's important just to understand the issues associated. And as I recognize on the slide, at least 2 of the following mental functions must be impaired to be considered dementia: memory, communications, focus, reasoning, and or visual perception. So it's not just memory loss. I talked about most of this yet, and I want to jump to the issue of treatment. You have likely known people who have tried or talked about trying these medicines. They are all currently approved singularly with the opportunity to slow the advancement of the disease. None, unfortunately, are curative, as I said, and there's basically 2 types: cholinesterase inhibitors, Aricept, Exelon, Razidine are the names that you'll hear for early to moderate stage, and memantine, Namenda, which is the brand for moderate to severe, and it's all about slowing the disease. There are some physicians prescribing vitamin E. Again, lots of studies proving or disproving its validity, but if it works for you, if any of these work, then they're fabulous. Public health. I gave you top 10. I'm not going to go through it again right now, but it's all about, I'm going to mess up the mantra: live, learn, love. Live, learn, love. Cardiac health is brain health. And if you take away nothing from today, that's it. Okay, how do we pay for this? So we know there's lots of choices. We know what causes the need. Paying for it is a challenge. The short answer is a lot of it gets paid for privately. The largest source of dollars outside of the nursing home, for a second, is you, your family, your kids, their future inheritances. And if it's not planned for, that's still the number 1 source of funding. Long-term care insurance is a wonderful tool. Show of hands, just for chuckles. How many people have long-term care insurance? This room is disproportionately well planned for. Thank you. Only 20% of Americans have a long-term care insurance. 70% of those are people that are over age 65. It's still the minority. We see plenty of clients with long-term care insurance, but it's really not ever taken off the way I think the government had hoped for. And I have reviewed personally, no exaggeration, 100 or 120 long-term care insurance policies. Every one of them is different. Their benefits are different. Their spend downs are different. They're just remarkably confusing. And unfortunately, unless you bought it 20 or 30 years ago, the policies that are out there are challenging. It doesn't mean don't get them, because they're valuable, but get them as young as you can. I mentioned the CCRC whole process. I will also mention there's a thing called CCRC or Life Plan at Home, where you can get all the same future benefits of Life Plan, but you stay in your own home. It's a different price point. It's a different program, but the basics are the same, which is if I need skilled nursing, assisted living, or memory care, that's going to be covered through my at-home program. And last but not least, we talk about Medicaid. Medicaid only pays for the nursing home, and it only pays once you have eliminated all of your assets down to about $1,100. You can have nothing, unfortunately, and be on Medicaid. There's a slight exception if you have a spouse living in the community where they can stay in their home, but generally you have to be used up all of your assets. Medicaid pays for almost all of the nursing home care in Connecticut, and it is the resource that is funded by the state of Connecticut to the tune of over $2 billion a year. So thank you, as taxpayers, you are all contributing to that funding source. It is the largest line item in our state budget, and we are essentially never hearing about it, talking about it, but it's a really important part of our political story, and the thing that I will spend more time every year in Hartford dealing with than anything else, because it's still 80% of our funding in Mosaic Jewish Home for the nursing home, but that's all it pays for. It doesn't cover assisted living, it doesn't cover memory care, it doesn't cover any life plan, it doesn't cover almost any home care benefit, with a couple of minor exceptions. So those are your funding choices. And if you don't have your plan, my only plea, come up with a plan. Long-term care is insurance, no shock value to anybody who's ever tried to pay for it. Average nursing home in Connecticut is $168,000. I think we're up to about $250,000 a year for those paying privately. It's a lot of money. Home care now is about $30 or $32 an hour. So if you have an 8-hour live-in, that's $250 a day. These are expensive resources, remembering that the first primary need is private pay. Last two issues, and I'm going to open it up to discussions. One is the whole subject of, do your kids know what you want? Dr. Atul Gawande from Harvard wrote a book a number of years ago now called Being Mortal. The whole story of that book was understanding what's important to you and making sure you talk to your kids about it, because as a Harvard-trained, remarkable, wonderful surgeon, he didn't know what his parents wanted, and when they got sick and needed end-of-life care, he was at a loss, and he wrote this book to encourage people to have those conversations. Again, my plea to all of you is make sure your kids know what you're thinking. Living wills and advance directives are documents that I talk a lot about with our staff. Less than 50% of our staff that are in the field have living wills and advance directives, and I just beg people, document your wishes, because as someone who deals with these issues, when they're not documented, it's a horrific situation on all sides, for the individual, for the kid, for the caregivers. So please, 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 if you don't have those, and I'm sure in this room 100% of the people do, but just putting it out there. And last but not least, I'm going to end with a quote, which is one of my favorites, from the director of the Genome Project. Children who live to be active, healthy, and mentally sound adults at 125 years old are already walking around, and there will be millions of them in the decades to come. So we are the kids. Our grandchildren are going to live a lot longer. Our job is to make the world a little bit better, and I thank you for your time.
Okay, I was in Florida with a fraternity brother. We're both 84 years old. He lives in West Palm at a place that's sort of like a aging Club Med.
Yep.
Do we have it? And it's very, very expensive. Do we have facilities like that up here?
Yes, sir. I'm going to repeat the question just to make sure it's clear. Friend down in Florida, which is in Boca Raton, and it is called the Sinai Residences, is what I'm assuming you are referring to. There are others, but Sinai was built by the Jewish community, interestingly, down there. That is exactly the model that we are building in Stanford. The ones that exist already, even though they're 25 years old, are Edge Hill in Stanford and Meadow Ridge up in Reading, both owned and managed by a company called Benchmark. So there are some good examples that exist that you can go see today. There's a brand new community being built that just opened in Purchase, New York, that is going to be called Broadview, and then ours is developed. The closest one will be in Stanford. So yes is the short answer. All different iterations of that same conversation. That is the life plan community that I was trying to describe in the slides. Okay?
Excuse me. It takes a little while for me to stand up. One thing that has not been discussed is assisted suicide. Very important alternative. I've discussed it at length with my daughter, and the point at which one chooses life is not really worth living, and that's not as bad as it sounds. It is quite well defined, but I believe there are states where there is assisted suicide. But what about Connecticut? What do you think about it?
Thank you for the question, and it absolutely is a important and I'm going to say emotionally charged subject. The state of Connecticut does not allow supportive suicide. There has been a bill proposed for a number of years now in the legislature that has gotten some meaningful momentum, and I have some friends that are deeply involved in its passage. I will tell you, on a professional level, I do not and cannot take a position on the subject for maybe some obvious reasons, because I try and avoid all political footballs because of the work that we do. The physicians that I know and the individuals that I know that are working on the bill that believe it needs to be a choice, that are very passionate about not ever wanting it to be a requirement, but an option. And I believe that at some point in the next year or two or three, that bill will pass and it will be a choice in Connecticut for those that want that to be part of their planning and their conversations with their kids and respect their opinions wholeheartedly. I will tell you, if you're interested in the bill and getting involved and making it happen, I can connect you with people that do. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Andrew. This is out of left field. I've got some cousins in the state of Washington with a grandmother who's suffering from memory loss, and they have a unique living situation where they're in the neighborhood. Are you familiar with that in the state of Washington?
So I don't know Washington, but describe, because I think there's some similar things elsewhere.
It's in the neighborhood. They've got a mixture of patients and caregivers in a familiar community setting.
Mm-hmm. Doug, I don't think there's anything like that in Connecticut. There's some. Let me give three very quick examples of other things that have been developed in other parts of the country and parts of the world that we're looking at. One is called a PACE program. And not to bore you with my other political hat, I have spent 15 years fighting to get PACE approved for the state of Connecticut. That passed in this year's legislature, and we are now working on developing a PACE program, which stands for Programs for All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. It operates in 35 states, and for whatever reason, Connecticut has fought us tooth and nail. It finally got approved and likely will get implemented sometime in 2024. PACE is, for another day, a wonderful resource for people with choice that live in the community. So PACE is one scenario similar to what you're asking. The second is a model that was developed in the Netherlands where it is a nursing home, but the nursing home is essentially like a sealed-off community with a supermarket and a restaurant and some typical community elements where the individuals in the nursing home can just walk over to the restaurant and have dinner thinking they're living in the community at large. So they've tried to normalize as much as humanly possible beyond even the household model that we have in the United States that we are exploring and maybe someday will be a U.S. opportunity as well. And then the third scenario, which are called NORCs, N-O-R-C, naturally occurring retirement communities, exist typically in cities. New York City has a bunch, for example, where the building happens to age naturally together, and organizations like ours would bring in resources to that NORC. People live in their apartment, but there's some other things for them to come together for meals and activities, et cetera. So NORCs are an interesting scenario. There really aren't any in Connecticut for a bunch of probably silly reasons, but those are three of the things that are out there that are being explored and developed. And quite frankly, I think there's going to be new models, again, back to our beginning point of just demands of the population. Yes, sir.
I got a copy of your 10 tips, and I'm happy to know that I'm already doing them.
Yeah. Will a video of this or a similar presentation be available online?
The answer is yes.
Excellent.
For a fee.
Excellent.
the role of the family. In your community, do most of the residents have family that lives nearby? Relatively nearby.
Yeah, excellent question. So, question was about family and geography. The short answer is absolutely, and 80 or 90% of the residents have very regular family visits, which is wonderful. The unfortunate part of that answer is we have a number of residents who don't because their kids live in California or wherever, and we work with what we call a friendly visitor program where we match up volunteers with those residents who don't have local families, so they have a regular visitor as well. But the short answer is the significant majority do. The kids, let's say our nursing home is in Bridgeport, which it is, and the kids live in Westport or Stamford or Rye, New York, or whatever. So some, I would say, come once a week, some come a couple of times a week. We have a number of spouses that live in the community that come every day. So it's a wide array of the answer, but generally the vast majority do have local visitors, yes. Yes, sir.
This has been very, very informative, I have to tell you. Of course, I'm not very old, so I don't worry about it, but I have long-term care for my wife, but they would never write long-term care for me because of my heart health. My question is it worth it for me to go out and shop it regardless of price at this point in my life, or should I just presume that the money I would have spent on that would ultimately go into something like senior living?
So the question is it worth evaluating the premiums on a long-term care policy? And my answer is always yes, it's worth looking. I think you're right that it may be challenging to come up with an affordable solution. And what I've been encouraging people to do now more and more is to look at 3 scenarios, really 4 scenarios simultaneously, and we actually built a kind of cool analytic spreadsheet to be able to do this, which takes you out over the next 10, 15, 20 years, depending upon how long you want to think you're going to live. And the analysis is, here's a long-term care policy, right? Here's its cost and its benefit. Here's a life plan community using Edge Hill or Meadow Ridge as the example. Here's life plan at home, where I'm going to pay to join but stay in my own house, so you build in the cost of home ownership. And the fourth is, here's the self-insured model that just says I'm going to put away that same amount of money into my own insurance program and fund it if I need it. The analysis is worthwhile because it's great education of what things potentially cost, and which of the 4 scenarios ultimately feels right to you is a very personal decision. We're always happy to help people do the analysis and to get the information, but I think it's worth shopping it, sure. Yes, sir.
Is there other group of long-term health care providers that are better than the others that you would recommend?
I'm assuming you mean of long-term insurance? The question is about the different long-term care insurance companies, and my short answer is no. I think there are... Wait, I'm being recorded. I have to be nice. No. The devil is in the detail in the specific policy. Obviously, like any insurance product, you want to find A-rated, good carriers, right? That's a good starting point. But the real answer is the benefits. At the end of the day, who's got the better elimination period? Some are 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, a year, which is the worst. The longer, the worse, before your benefits kick in. The amount of money they're going to pay for in terms of a daily benefit, the inflator riders and what those cost. So there's so much variability in the policy that I think the devil in the detail is who you work with. There are some very good insurance brokers that carry all of those plans, which is how I recommend people try and do the work, right? You don't need to do the work yourself, but get a good long-term care insurance broker and help you do this. I don't distinguish between the companies. Great questions. Yes, sir.
I'm a retired veteran, from the U.S. Navy, and I understand that the VA has a lot of provisions for retired servicemen. Could you expound on that a little bit as an alternative?
Sure. So I didn't include in my slide, but I appreciate the question about what other veterans benefits are relevant to the conversation. The broad, simple answer is in everything that I described related to the community, there are some enhanced benefits for veterans that are lovely. So where Medicare may pay for X, the veteran benefit might be a supplement to that. On the home care side, there's some interesting creative benefits, all of which are good and explained way better through the VA than I can. But it's a great point that there are some enhanced benefits. On the institutional or facility side for skilled nursing or assisted living, the VA is very restrictive as to where you can go. So the beds that are accessible to you are, and I don't mean this in a bad way at all, it's just limited. They only contract with certain facilities, and it may or may not be in a community that is reasonable for you to get to. I have no idea, sorry, in terms of where veterans benefits cover a nursing home in this area, for example. But it is limited in terms of selection, and I don't think they pay for assisted living at all. But again, not my severe area of expertise. But worth looking into deeper through the VA.
Okay, I think that's about it. We have another group coming in behind us that needs to use this room, guys. So we pretty much have to end it up right here. I have just two announcements that I forgot to make. One was we did have winners of the golf tournament yesterday. Kind of hard to believe it, but there was like 4 groups that tied at a 76. I find that hard to believe, but they did. But the winning team, after they went through all their different eliminations, was Don Bancroft, Greg Hawkins, Harris Uzdan, and Bob Lang. Somehow Bob Lang always seems to get himself on a good team. I don't know. And secondly, you all heard about the carjacking story in Westport. I mean, that's a big news. And last night it was they had a meeting in town hall, and I saw one of our members over here asking a very long, tough question. Just to let you know, Dick Cald just recently did a very in-depth recording, what do you call them, Dick? Podcast, thank you. See, and it's hitting me already. Podcast, all about that story. So if you want to really get into what happened, listen to our podcast, which is one of the new things that we're doing in the Wise Men. It's one of our big contributions to the community. It's also part of how we're helping make the Wise Men more and more force in this town, which is great. So to our speaker, thank you very much. We appreciate it. It was very informative. Glad to have you.